And now we have Ajahn Brahm online.
Hello, can you hear me? Not yet.
Not yet, Ajahn. Good afternoon, Ajahn.
Good
Happy New
afternoon.
Year.
Happy New Year. Long time no see, most of you.
Yeah, that's quite long. That's quite long.
Couple of days. Okay, great. I can see you perfectly.
Okay, so I guess you can see only me. That's currently the setting.
No, I can see Pan there.
But we do have a lot of audience here on site, so looking forward to your talk and your guided meditation. Before we start, we would like to request for the refuges and the precepts.
Certainly. How many precepts would you like? 227 or 311?
I shall take the middle path and take 5 now.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready?
Yes, Ajahn.
Okay, here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi saranam gacchami.
Tisarana gamanaṃ nititaṃ. And now we'll chant the verses to observe the 5 precepts. Panati pata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Anatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvāda veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura Meraya Majjapamadhatana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Sukhatin Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Niputin Yanti Tasma Silang Visodaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Excellent. Okay. So, am I finished now?
Nearly, Ajahn, nearly. We will first start off with a request for a short guided meditation, Ajahn.
Okay, yes. How short? About 6 inches or 4 inches?
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, if everybody could sit comfortably, first of all. And once you're sitting comfortably, and then close your eyes and check again, how comfortably are you actually sitting? With my eyes closed, I usually sit on the floor, but giving a Zoom talk, I'm sat on a chair. So the first thing I notice is my feet could be better adjusted, and let my feet be flat on the floor. If you're sitting cross-legged, make sure that your legs and your bottom are comfortable. Do some fidgeting at the beginning rather than the end. And then make sure your back is comfortable. I always like adjusting my back, and today I feel I should really make my back nice and strong. There's a rest on the back of my chair, but I'm not going to use that. And then I check my torso, make sure there's not too many aches and pains in there. If there is, that has to take precedence. To make sure my body feels comfy. Because part of the method of meditation is to relax to the max. First your body and then your mind. And make sure my arms are all comfy, and my shoulders relaxed. Make sure my head is well positioned on top of the neck. And with the muscles on my face nice and at ease. And if you do quite a bit of meditation, you know these muscles, you know your body so well. You know when it's relaxed and when it's tight. And you always learn what causes the relaxation of your own body. And when you know that, you become quite skilled at being able to relax the body at almost any time. When I do relax my body, I should be used to this by now, but I always get a beautiful feeling of delight. My body is at ease. I know when my body is at ease, when it's relaxed, I can meditate and it won't disturb me at all. So once my body is at ease, then I do the same to my mind. First of all, I let go of all past and all future. I always imagine the past and the future which you carry around with you like two heavy suitcases. I know I recently was traveling, I was in Singapore a couple of days ago. When I went to the airport, I'm sure our great President Pang Hong will verify this. He saw me only taking my monk's bag with me. I think he carried it a little bit, it's very light. I saw many other people having so many suitcases. It's much lighter to carry less. I just imagine myself with two heavy suitcases, one in the left hand, one in the right hand, and how heavy they could be. And the one in the left hand, I recognize as my past. It's got this big sign on the outside of the suitcase, P-A-S-T, past. It's really heavy. And because I've been holding it for such a long time, my arms ache and my shoulders hurt. And I look at the suitcase in the right hand, and that's got the letters F-U-T-U-R-E written on the outside. That's my future. All the anxieties and fears. And that's packed into the suitcase on the right hand. I've been holding that such a long time that my right arm and my right shoulder feel sore. Then I focus on the suitcase in the left hand, the past, and very gently I lower that suitcase onto the ground. And I notice that moment when it meets the floor, all the weight disappears. And that allows me to move my hand away from the handle and relax my left hand, my left arm, my left shoulders. I've not abandoned the past. I've just put it down for a while to give myself a rest. And then I imagine the suitcase in my right arm, the future, and that too I lower gently to the ground. When it meets the floor, the weight, the burden disappears. So I can move my right arm up to my side. And now I've put down both the past and the future. So the things carrying it, my arms, me, can relax and regenerate its strength. And once it does that, then I can feel just so more strong, at peace, happy. I'm not afraid that I might lose those suitcases. They're down there. I just put them down for a while. Now I'm standing in this wonderful place between the past and the future, which we call the present moment. A place to relax. A place just to allow our mental muscles to strengthen. One of those mental muscles which strengthen is our mindfulness. When we're bothered about the past and the future, you will find that the mind becomes very tired and mindfulness is weak. When you put those things down, the mindfulness has a chance to strengthen up. And as the mindfulness strengthens, you may notice that it can be aware of this wonderful thing we call the silence of the mind. Please keep your eyes closed. But when you came into the hall of the Buddhist fellowship, what did you notice? The floor, the ceilings, the walls, the people. How many of you noticed that the space in that hall, the space between people, between the walls and the floor, is far greater in volume? Same as the silence in our mind. We tend not to notice it, but it is there. The space between your thoughts. When you put down the past and the future, the thoughts have less momentum, which means you can see the gaps between thoughts, the space, the emptiness, the silence, much more easily. To be aware of the silence in the mind. Often you don't need to do much more than that. From there the meditation takes over. Because silence is golden. You find the delight like striking gold in the desert. It's joyful to have nothing to think about, just to be and be peaceful, silent, just aware. And in the silence, if you want to watch your breathing, fine. Just to notice the breath as it comes in. To be a friend to the breath. Never try to control the breath. Otherwise, the breath will be like it's scared of you. And you will wander off. Just to notice the breath. Does it always feel the same, just one in-breath from the beginning to the end? Or are there different sensations which you can notice? Does the in-breath last as long as the out-breath? How do you know what's in-breath and what's out-breath? Do they feel different? And after a while, when you create an interest in something as simple as your breath, you'll find it is interesting. As long as you create enough mindfulness, first of all, let go of past and future, create enough silence, then the breath is like lying on one of these hammocks in beautiful sunshine. You're swinging backwards, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath. Relaxed with nothing to do in the whole world. Peace is very beautiful. And see if you can notice the beauty, the delight in this part of meditation. And when you can notice the delight, and you feel that you would like to stay longer in the meditation, then that's a good sign that you're recognizing the benefit of meditation. The peace, the relaxation, the joy, the clarity of mind. And you realize you too can do that. And if we had more time, then you'd be able to take that meditation so much deeper and enjoy it enormously. And now, it's only a short meditation. So, how do you feel right now? First of all, how peaceful are you? And secondly, how relaxed is your body? When you feel your body being relaxed, every time I end these meditations, my body feels so at ease. Hopefully yours feels at ease as well. A wonderful benefit. I now invite you to open your eyes to end the short guided meditation with a smile if you can. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think a lot of us are very familiar with you, but considering that we have new faces on site, I'll just do a short bio of you before I hand the mic over to you for the talk today.
Okay. Off you go. It's always nice to learn who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I need to get my job done. Sorry, guys.
Okay, no, carry on.
So we have Ajahn Brahmavamsa Mahathera today, popularly known as Ajahn Brahm, is a well-known Buddhist teacher to a growing international audience keen to learn meditation and develop a deeper spiritual understanding. A theoretical physics graduate from Cambridge University, Ajahn Brahm was ordained as a Theravada monk in Bangkok at the age of 23 by the abbot of Wat Saket and trained with Ajahn Chah Bodhiyana Mahathera. Ajahn Brahm has spent more than 45 years in the forest meditation tradition and is the abbot of Bodhiyana Monastery in Western Australia with 24 monks under his training. He is also the spiritual patron of Buddhist Fellowship Singapore and the author of several popular books titled Opening the Door of the Heart, Happiness Through Meditation, Simply This Moment, The Art of Disappearing, and Good Bad Who Knows. So with that, my job is done. Over to you, Ajahn.
Excellent. And so the title of the talk, I think it was, is not that hard, or something like that. And life is not that hard. It's pretty easy to do. You're born, you eat, you sleep, you work, and then you die. It's not that difficult a thing to do. Why do people make it difficult? It's because of sometimes all the wantings which we have, all the cravings which we have, all the great desires to make our life really meaningful and to be productive. And even as a monk, I see that. When I became a monk, as they said, when I was only 23, and that was, goodness gracious, 48 years ago, almost 49 years ago now. So when I became a monk, I always thought I'd have a nice, simple life. I thought I'd just go to a forest in Thailand, sit under a tree, and disappear from the world for the rest of my life. I could just meditate and get up, live simply, eat simply, and just have a beautiful, peaceful life. And then what happened? Then I became a teacher and ended up traveling all over the place and teaching meditation and teaching Dhamma. But do I really mind that? No. Because I see in that balance of life of serving and also having solitude. When you put those two together, it's a beautiful life. And I think I have mentioned to many of you that now recently, Christmas, New Year, I have been working overly, and I have to be very careful. I did see in the news that the Pope died, or one of the Popes died. So I have to be very careful with my health. I'm not the Pope, but I have been working very hard. So as soon as this talk is finished and I go back to our Bodhiyana Monastery, I'm going to have a nice 12 days personal retreat. Personal retreat, sometimes you don't know what to call it. Call it a self-retreat. There's no self there. So I call it personal retreat or whatever. In other words, to relax and rest for a while. And it's not just doing that for my good health. Usually 2 or 3 days will be enough. I shouldn't say that, but that's true. But it's also to give a good example to others that when it is tiring, then take a rest. An obvious teaching. And it's not that hard to do. Other people, all I need to do is go to Singapore, complain a bit about how much I'm working, come back here, complain a bit about how much I was working overseas, and then people give me sympathy. Which means that when I can ask for a little bit extra time by myself, they give it to me. Thank you so much. But as well as that if you need to work and if you need to do something, you can. And one of the similes which I said on a Friday night, was it Friday night? No, I said on last night, on the New Year's Eve, was that people this year, I'm not quite sure why, but they're facing 2023 with negativity. I'm not sure what they're reading on the news or what they're seeing on the TVs, but sometimes there's so much negativity about the economy, about diseases, about governments, about, I don't know what, but they seem to have more negativity in this world than positivity. Negativity is good, as long as it's confined to COVID tests. Other than that, please be positive. And what that also means is that why are always people seeing what might go wrong in the world, what might go wrong in life? Life is not that hard. And the following story, which is one of my classic stories, which I said again last night, was the story when after about 3 or 4 years as a monk, staying with Ajahn Chah in Wat Pah Pong, northeast of Thailand, they had just finished building their Uposatha hall, this big building in which they would do all the ordinations and all of the serious Sangha business for the Wat Pah Pong group of monks. And so when it was finished, there was all this earth left over. And because there was so much earth left over, one morning after the alms round and in the dining room, Ajahn Chah said, I've seen there's so much earth left over, and would you monks mind moving it? In other words, there's plenty of wheelbarrows and shovels. And so for the next 3 days, it was only 3 days, we worked really hard moving this big pile of earth. And if you want to know what it was like working in Wat Pah Pong as a monk, that we'd have our arms round just after dawn, and then we'd come back, we'd have maybe half an hour to get everything ready, and then we'd be served our meal, just a few pots coming down the line of food. And some of that food, again, was not really nutritious. If you look at the photos of me in that time, I did look very different than I am now. I was thin, very thin. And so after that one not very nutritious meal of the day, and that's all we had, then we got into some work robes and we started moving these big piles of earth, shoveling it, pushing it. And in other words, it was very, very hard work. And usually to about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening when we couldn't see anymore and the sun went down. And that was really hard work. I was sweating a lot because it was very hot and I wasn't used to that heat. The mosquitoes would come out and bite you all the time. Both hands were on the handles of the wheelbarrow, so you couldn't sort of flick them off or anything. They had free rein to bite whatever they wanted. It was really hard work. And at the end of the day, I was tired and dirty as well, but I was just too exhausted to go and have a shower. And up the next morning, same routine, from about 8, 9 o'clock till in the evening, was shoveling earth and putting it in wheelbarrows and pushing it to this right place. But I was a very faithful monk. If this was for my teacher, I would do that. I wouldn't sort of question Ajahn Chah. He'd already given me so much. It's my chance to repay the debt which I had to him. So after 3 days, we were finished. And after 3 days, I went to sleep that night, still dirty, but I realized tomorrow I can have a really good wash and have a rest, do some meditation. But then in the morning, Ajahn Chah left to go to another monastery. And the second monk, who that time was Ajahn 𝐸, said to us, you put the earth in the wrong place, move it. And he had a point. He explained what he meant. The earth was in a wrong place. So another 3 days of hard work, pushing wheelbarrows in the hot, stinky weather, being bitten by mosquitoes, and just getting more and more tired, having no chance and time to do anything else. Really hard work. And after 3 days, we'd move the earth again. I didn't mind because I was looking forward to the next day when I could really get my meditation back into line, to rest, to wash my robes, all that stuff which a monk has to do. We only have one set of robes. We don't have spares to use. So I needed to wash them. But That was the night Ajahn Chah came back. And after the morning arms round and meal, he said, I have an announcement. You put the earth in the wrong place. Why did you put it there? I told you to put it in this other place. So move it. You know, to this day, I think Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Liam, they planned that from the beginning. Because that was just really hard. Another 3 days of hard labor, bitten by mosquitoes again. I think even my blood couldn't have been that much goodness in it for the mosquitoes after 6 days of feeding them so many times. And it was just so hot and I was so stinky, but I had to do it. But this time, for those of you who know the story, this time, honestly, I lost my faith. These senior monks, they don't push the wheelbarrows. The junior monks do, and that was me. And look, I never became a monk to push wheelbarrows. I became a monk. I was a theoretical physicist before. We never pushed any wheelbarrow. And I was an intellectual. Now I had to push wheelbarrows. This is not what I ordained for. So I was complaining. And as I was complaining, and in English, as I was pushing these wheelbarrows, I thought the other monks would not understand me. But of course, there's something called body language. When someone is upset, you can very easily see that. So when I was so upset, the one monk came up to me. He knew a little bit of English. And what he said to me was wonderful Dhamma. He said, pushing the wheelbarrows is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. And that really sort of hit me very hard. He was right. When I was complaining, pushing those wheelbarrows, they became so heavy. I became so negative. I was having a terrible time. So I tried what he said. I stopped thinking about it and just pushed them. And first of all, they did feel much lighter. Honestly, they do. Try it out yourself. Just do some hard labor for the Buddhist fellowship and try complaining first of all, and then just try just doing it without thinking. And you will find that just doing it is a lot of fun. I remember at the time, once I decided just to stop thinking about it, we had good fun. I was a young monk, playful, so we would have races with other monks, see who could win, the English monk or the Thai monk. And also that every now and again, if one of the monks actually just got to the finish line first with the wheelbarrow, then when I was filling my wheelbarrow, it's amazing just how I missed my aim and the dirt went all down to the other monk on purpose, just playing around, having fun. And so those 3 days, they went past really quickly and they were fun. I learned that really important teaching, that complaining about things makes things so much harder. So that's one of the reasons why, whatever you have to do in the future in 2023, whatever 2023 looks like for you, don't just think about it, just do it. It's not that hard. It's only times when we make it hard. It reminded me of a similar incident even when I was a student at university. When I was a student, I had all these clubs which you could join. And please, I don't recommend this at all, but at those times I was an ordinary young man, and if there was something alcohol to drink, I would drink it. And so I remember just going to these different clubs, and then I found out that I had joined the boat club. These, eight, which people at university in places like Oxford and Cambridge like rowing in races. And I think, what did I do that for? And I realized because they were serving this very, very delicious port. And they had enough money, they just wanted little victims like me who signed their names up. And then I was in this team rowing. Now that may look fun, but that again is really hard work. You've got one of the oars and you have to really time it and do it correctly. And when it's in the water, you really have to pull it very hard, and it's very sort of tiring. And I remember just on one of these races we were going on, that it was a very long race. I was getting more and more tired, exhausted. And the coach, they always had one of these senior coaches on the footpath of the River Cam. It's going through Cambridge. He would be shouting at you in a little megaphone. And he looked at me and he shouted, my name at that time was Peter, "Peter, you're making an ugly face." Now I was pushing this oar, it's really heavy and hard. "You're making an ugly face." And he was right. So I stopped making an ugly face and instead smiled. And that's when I discovered a very wonderful secret about life. If you make an ugly face when you're pulling an oar in a boat race, the oar is much harder to pull. But when you smile, it actually feels lighter. You got more energy, and you can push that oar with much better effect. It taught me whatever you have to do in life, you should always smile. Even if you're going to the dentist, put a big smile on your face. And of course, when they inject you, then you have to take the smile off your face. But nevertheless, when you're first going there, try and see something positive. It's much easier. I used to like going to my dentist, and the reason why was that he had one of the most comfortable benches I've ever seen. You sit down on that bench and he presses a couple of buttons, the back goes down, and it's contoured to fit your body. It's one of the most comfortable places I've ever been to in my life. Sometimes you think you should get one of those in your monastery so that you can meditate so easily in a dentist chair. Now, you've also heard me say that sometimes one of the problems people have in meditation is the saliva comes out. In the dentist, you've got one of these little instruments, they put in your mouth and go, and it sucks all the saliva out. Sometimes I thought of getting a couple of those for the next retreat I teach in Singapore, so that people have no trouble dribbling. But anyhow, but this is just having that happiness there makes life so much easier. And so that's one of the reasons also, if you go to work, and if you have a smile on your face, it lifts other people's spirits up, and you find you can do much more work, and it's of higher quality. That happiness, that joy is an energy source of the mind. And that energy source is something which makes you produce much better outcomes. So you don't just worry about what you have to do in 2023. Just if you smile a little bit more at it, you find it all works out well in the end. I don't know what you thought about 2022 when it started 12 months ago. But a lot of people at that time, there was COVID and the economy was getting a bit rough and there's all sorts of problems in the world. There's always going to be problems in the world. This is what life is. The world is never perfect. And that's what the world is. Monks at Bodhinyana Monastery are never perfect. And that's what my monastery is like. So you never get surprised. Okay, this is life. Welcome to life. And you have fun pushing those wheelbarrows, healing whatever needs to be healed. You know, honestly, when I went over to Kuala Lumpur, I've told many people about the story of the lift not working and having to walk up 8 stories. Oh, sorry, no, it's gone big, was it 6 stories? 6 stories every day, 3 or 4 times a day for 8 days. And when I came back here to our city center, you know what we found last night? It was the hot water system was busted. So I haven't had a shower today. There's no hot water. But don't worry, because you can see my face, you can see my smile, but you can't smell what I smell like. So that's not being able to be transmitted over Zoom, which is quite fortunate for you. But it doesn't matter, you just wait for one day and then you can wash yourself afterwards. It's not that bad. Although I do remember that time when we started out what banana chart, and when we started it out, we were very poor. We ran out of soap. And we thought, what should we do once we've run out of soap? And we said, no, we're not going to tell the lay people. Just we noticed, because we couldn't really bathe that well without soap. We can throw water over ourselves and rub ourselves, but it wasn't the same as washing in with soap. So for about 4 or 5 days, we didn't have a baths. These are Western monks. And we noticed on alms round, we'd walk into the village, and the villagers, they were usually very friendly to us, but they tended to walk a little bit back from us, and they put the rice in the bowl. Their arms were really stretched out when they dropped the rice in the bowl. They were obviously getting the message that we weren't washing. And then, of course, the headman came and asked, what's going on? And we said, we run out of soap. And for that day on, we never run out of soap ever again. For the villagers, they knew what would happen if they never supplied us with enough soap. They'd face the smell the following morning in the village. So anyway, that's like the simplicity. It's a good story afterwards. Every time there's a mistake happens and life becomes more difficult, even personally for me. Whenever that happens, there's always a good story to put in a book and make lots of money for the Buddhist fellowship or for Bodhinyana monastery or the nuns monastery. I like it sometimes when things go wrong. Let people know, write a story about it, and let people know how to deal with the mistakes in life. And so then the mistakes do not really worry you, and you're not afraid of what's going to happen in the future. One of those great stories which comes to mind, it wasn't actually me, it was this senior monk in Thailand. Still remember his name, 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡𝐧 Tape Siddhi Muni. He was a really good monk, but also a very brilliant administrator. And at the time, he was like number 2 in the hierarchy of Thailand. So once the what they call the Sangha would pass away, he would take over as the leading senior monk of Thailand. And he was pretty easygoing. He didn't become a monk to become some leader like that, but he was so well loved and revered. He's a good meditator and a very smart man. But the number 3 monk, he was really ambitious, like a Devadatta, and he really wanted to become the senior monk of Thailand. And so he thought, as long as this second monk is there, there's no way in the world that he would ever succeed to be the top monk of Thailand. So he listened to some of that monk's talks, and then he got passages from his talks, which were recorded on these tapes, these tape machines, not these days online. And he actually edited this out, added that, and he managed to get a sort of a document which sounded like that monk was a communist. He was just saying about it's important to share things. I said that, I think, in Singapore. I said it's important to share things, but maybe not share your COVID. Put a mask on if you feel sick. But nevertheless, that he convinced the court that this monk was a communist. And at that time, it was against the law in Thailand to espouse or teach communism. So that monk got put in jail. He was a second monk in Thailand, and they put him in jail for a few years. And while he was in jail, that third monk, now elevated to the second monk, the head monk of Thailand died. And so this monk was elected to be the Sangha of Thailand. He got his dream job. But then apparently he was in this convoy, because very senior people will always, be in a convoy whenever they go anywhere in a really nice car. with police in front and police behind. He was on the way to the airport in Dongmen, the old airport. And it was like what they call a dual carriageway. And a car in the opposite, on the opposite side of the dual carriageway, going the opposite direction, got out of control, went over the median strip, and he hit the car in which the Sangha was driving. It was purely an accident, but the only person who was injured was that new Sangha. And in fact, so badly injured that he died. No one else had injuries, just the Sangha. Now, if that happens in Thailand, they feel that there must be some bad karma there that Sangha did. He was the only one injured in this freak accident. So they did their research and they found out that the thing he did was to actually to lie, make this document that the Sangha or the number 2 monk that was a communist, when he wasn't. He was just a kind, compassionate person. And so they released this number 2 monk from jail. He lost his chance of being the leading monk, but he didn't mind at all when he was interviewed. And I remember reading the book he wrote about being in jail for 2 years in Thailand, and something he never ever was responsible for. And he said he thanked that monk who eventually became the Sangha. He thanked him so much. Those 2 years in prison were some of the best years of his life. He had no responsibilities. He didn't have to give talks or to do Zoom talks. He wouldn't anyway, because Zoom wasn't invented then, but I think you know what I mean. And he could live a nice, peaceful life, meditate whenever he wanted, and read up on some of those books he should have been reading up on, but never having the time to do. No one could visit him and ask questions. He had a wonderful time. And it kind of, when he said, and I read this little autobiography he wrote, I thought, wow, how can I do that? That's one of the reasons why. Even though it was quite ascetic in Thailand, but he had his own cell and he had food, it's simple food, but it was enough for him. But mostly he had freedom of time and he was quite happy to be there. And because of that simple 2 years, he always puts down some of the best years of his life. So whatever you face in life, don't worry about it. You can always make something out of it. You think too much of the negative consequences and you miss all the great opportunities which these weird experiences give you. As you all know, and I'm being honest, I never planned, never wanted to be a senior monk. It's just the monk who was in front of me sort of fell in love and disrobed. And so I was landed with a job. I was the most senior monk left here. And the other thing I think I told you about was that resolution I had made anyway. I made a resolution as a young monk. I would never ask to go anywhere. Wherever Ajahn Chah sent me, there I would go. And I would stay there until Ajahn Chah asked me to come back. And that was it. It made it very simple for me. I didn't have to think where I wanted to go. I could always help out anywhere. So where Ajahn Chah sent me, there I'd go. When he asked me to come back, I'd come back. Simple as that. So one day he asked me to go to Australia to help Ajahn Jacaro build a monastery in Perth. So off I went. And it was only a couple of weeks after I landed in Perth that Ajahn Chah had his stroke and he couldn't speak anymore. And because Ajahn Chah couldn't speak anymore, he couldn't ask me to come back. So I've been stuck here for the past 38 years. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. You don't have to think about it. You just do it and have a wonderful time. So it's nice to being able not to be afraid of the future, knowing that you have the resources. Whatever happens, you can always have a wonderful, peaceful time. And that's actually one of the reasons I don't mind giving this talk. That when you look at the beginning of a new year, you think, oh, all the opportunities all the dangers. Look at the opportunities more than the dangers. And if things aren't perfect, that's not a problem at all. You can always use some of these great teachings of the Buddha to know that if you have this goal to actually achieve, keep going for it. It's only a matter of time. You never needed to fail. It just sometimes it takes more of a time than you thought. All these great projects which we've had in Buddhism over the years, over the decades, sometimes they're much slower than I expected, but we eventually get there. And so in the end, it's a wonderful journey, and it sometimes tests us out. But if it really is an inspiring project which you want to do with your life and with other people's lives, if you're on a committee or something, wonderful. Keep on going. And honestly, the end of your years, I've been a monk a long time now, 48 years, this gets said in my 49th. And I look back upon all the things which I've done and helped in this life, even just last night. In the talk I gave at in our Nolamala Center, another lady came up to me and said, I just needed to tell you that I'm another one of those ladies who can honestly say to you that you saved my life. Some terrible situation was going through, and she listened to some of the Dhamma talks, and that really got right inside of her and just stopped her committing suicide. No, it's just last night. So imagine that. I often say I don't get much pay in this job, and any donations I get go to somewhere else. I don't ever see them. I don't really need them. But what I do get is huge job satisfaction. And that's one of the reasons why you keep on going. Never underestimate the power of just coming into a Buddhist fellowship, sitting down, helping, talking to somebody, doing all of the arrangements, the accounts or whatever. All of that is fantastic. It inspires you and inspires others. So it's a great resource. And I'm being honest with you, you're incredibly fortunate to be members of an organization like the Buddhist Fellowship. Many people want me to join so many places, but in Singapore, I chose the Buddhist Fellowship. Why? Because you're a high quality organization. So I think that's about an hour, is it? Yeah, you're close anyway. Now we have the questions time. Questions, comments, and complaints. Is that about right? Yes. I see Eileen nodding her head. Great. Okay, so see if you can outwit me with one of the wonderful quotations. I asked the monks before I left if they can answer this question. I'm going to ask this question of you. I told them, please, that's right, please don't, oh no, I've forgotten it now. What is it? Please don't do what I suggest.
Okay, Ajahn, I have one question from online.
Okay. But then at the end, I want an answer, see if you can answer that question. Don't do what I ask you to do. It cannot be done.
So we are encouraged to pay respect to those who hurt us, as they are our teacher in developing positive qualities like metta, patience, etc. Do you think these qualities can get developed automatically when we are practicing meditation without facing those kind of people or life challenges? And is the life challenge required to achieve Sotapanna?
No. Sometimes people are very bright, very lucky. Look, in order to keep the school rules, do you really need to go to the disciplinarian? Only if you're a bit dumb do you have to face the problems of real life, or so-called what they call real life. Smart people, they don't need to get into trouble. So smart people can learn lots of compassion and wisdom without having to suffer so much. You know the Buddha's lovely story of the 5 horses. That is a lovely story. And the first horse, the rider gets on the horse's back and doesn't need, it just needs to take out the whip, and the shadow falls on the horse, and the horse realizes, I better behave, otherwise I might get hit. And the second, I think the first horse doesn't even need to see the shadow of the whip, just the rider gets on it and it behaves. The second, the shadow of the whip needs to fall and it behaves. The third horse needs just to touch the horse with the whip, not hurt it, but just touch it, and the horse realizes, I better behave. And the fourth horse, the owner has to whack it, ow, only once, and the horse realizes what it needs to do and never needs to misbehave again. And the fifth horse, the owner has to whack, 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 and still the horse doesn't know what to do. And often when I tell that, especially at retreats, I ask the retreats, which horse do you identify with? And most of them put their hand up, number 5. You don't need to do that in order to develop wisdom and compassion and metta and become a stream winner. Instead, to see if you can learn these qualities through a sense of joy and happiness. And you know that's my way. I never tell you off. I never shouted at anybody, I think, in the Buddhist fellowship, unless you're a long distance away and I say, there's a snake. Then I shout at you, but it's only out of compassion, never to sort of make you feel miserable. So this is one of the reasons why kindness is the best teacher. And the kindness, dealing with kind people, other kind people, that inspires you too. And when you hang out with Kalyana Mitta, with good friends, that is the fastest way to become a stream winner.
And of course, come to Sunday talks at BF.
Indeed, that's one of the fastest ways.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions online, and I'm going to ask for questions from on site. Is there any questions on site? Any brothers and sisters would like to make? You know, we're very fortunate to have Ajahn with us today, so make the best of it, people.
Yeah.
Work him hard. All right, Sister Hui Kim.
Good afternoon, Ajahn. Hello.
Afternoon.
Thank you for coming along with us today. I actually have a question. It's like when do we know when we can allow ourselves to be ill and tell ourselves, body, okay, it's okay to be sick, or when do we need to control ourselves and say, body, you're not supposed to be ill right now because we have important things to do. So how do we know the difference?
How we know the difference is, now in Singapore, you just have a very hard schedule of work, doing so much. So it's true that sometimes, I've seen these studies where senior executives only get sick in the holidays. It's as if they put off their sickness until the time when they can be sick without ruining their company. But that's a bit rough for me. So instead, if you are sick, be honest about it. And one of the best things is just to find the time to rest. A lot of times people feel they're too busy to be sick. But you find if that's the attitude you have when sickness comes, it's very intense and it lasts much longer. And honestly, you've known me for a long time. Eileen, when was the last time you knew me to be sick? Any answer?
Can't remember. Maybe the time when you were in a Victoria concert hall when you went to meditate because you
Okay, that's really
flu.
good.
You had a cold.
Yeah, and then what happened?
And then you had the allergy at Sentosa last year.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
did that stop me working?
That was the flower that caused you to have a allergy, but you continue to work.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it, I must admit. But if you're really sick, if that's all you have, a little cough because of an allergy to a flower. Of course, know that please understand this, that there are some allergies which I do have because my father had asthma. That's the cause of his death when I was only 16. I do have allergies. So if ever you want to actually set the shrine up in the BF, because I'm coming there to do some teaching, please get the flowers which I don't have an allergy towards. And my favorite flower, which is always very safe, is cauliflower. And sometimes people have done that. They put on the shrine a cauliflower. And I think, what's that doing on there? Why don't they have these other flowers like roses or sunflowers? Because Ajahn Brahm is not allergic to cauliflower. But look, my health has been literally amazing over so many years. The last time I went to a hospital was, I remember this because I got sick during a rains retreat, 17th rains retreat. I went to a hospital for 1 week, and this disciple said, no, we need to give you a lot of tests. And so the disciple, he was a Sri Lankan doctor, he just happened to be a gynecologist. So when I went into the hospital, on the top of my bed was Ajahn Brahm under the gynecologist. And that caused so much humor in the hospital. What's a man doing under a gynecologist? But anyway, I just had a rest for a couple of days and I was fine afterwards. And then later on, it was a rains retreat. I got some really good meditation. And I still remember that time going to Ajahn Jacara's hut and just reporting the meditation experiences I was having. And he said something which I thought was really amazingly predictive. He said, I don't think you're going to get sick again. And I was right. That's the last time I was really sick. A little cough sometimes, yes, but nothing really, which I would call sickness. So anyway, I always put that down to the attitude you have to your body, understanding your body, learning from your body, looking after your body. And because of that, I've said many, many times that you can become so aware of your body. You can see problems happening before even doctors can. And you put your attention in that place, and then you can relax it, rest it, and have a beautiful time. And live a long life without much sickness. Of course, his karma as well comes into it, but it seems that I've had some good karma from the past, so I'm doing pretty well. But if you are sick, there's nothing wrong with being sick. If you are sick, then take the time off work, and you find it's less time off work if you act very quickly and properly and get that sickness under control or whatever in plenty of time.
Thank you, Ajahn. Any other questions from site? If there isn't, then last question from me, Ajahn, I guess. So for many times, I've personally experienced the part about is the thinking that is hard, the doing is not hard. However, in those times whereby the thinking just kind of gets overwhelming, is there a quick tip to pull us out of that spiral and just move on and not be stuck with that thought in the mind? Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's a great question. Thank you for coming up with it. And the thinking a lot of time is one's afraid what other people think of you. You believe you have a project to be done, and it's really, really, really important. But honestly, just what is so important is your own health and well-being, and the health and well-being of your family and friends and people who love you and care for you. How much time does it take when people have to visit you in hospital? That's a lot of time wasted for them. So if you can possibly, just when you do feel sick, or just to realize that this is compassionate for others and compassionate for yourself, to get to that doctor as soon as possible and get some healing done, and just finish with it quickly. So you can think, but think in a wise way. Don't think in a worried way that, oh, I'm not allowed to be sick. You're all allowed to be sick. Is not a human being. Even the Buddha became sick and took time off. That's why he had this wonderful Dr. 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡𝐦, and the 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡 would look after him. He was such a great doctor that many other people became monks simply to be able to access a great doctor. And so that's one of the reasons why that even our ordination ceremonies today, we have to ask the candidates, so we got this sickness, that sickness, some other sickness. And that was just the remains of making sure that people didn't ordain as a monk just to get free medical care. So anyway, so sickness, tiredness, please see if you can take account of that. Have a very positive attitude to life, laugh a lot. And even laughter heals a lot of sicknesses, or at least makes them much worse. Just like that, I haven't seen the movie obviously, but was it Patch Adams or something? There's this American doctor who would dress up in tutus or something and do really crazy things in the hospital. And those crazy things just soften people's hearts so much that they became much healthier, much better outcomes. And so that's one of the reasons, if you are having lots of thoughts, as I said during the meditation, see if you can get into the habit of going into a hall like Buddhist fellowship, and don't just notice people who are there. Don't just notice, I always go in there and notice the Buddha statue, which was offered to me by King Sihanouk. And I came back to Perth via Singapore, and I gave it to the Buddhist fellowship. I thought it looked nice there. So in the hall there, you can see this little green statue offered to me by the King of Cambodia at the time. And so little things like that, you look at things, but you don't notice spaces. There's so many spaces between even those objects in those cupboards next to the shrine. There's so much space, in a hall, even though it's packed tight with people. There's so much space everywhere, but people look at objects, thoughts, rather than silence. That's one of the reasons why. Just change your perception and see the emptiness between things. The space in Singapore. People think Singapore is crowded. There's lots of space there. People don't notice it. They see the things, not the what surrounds everything. Not what separates things, but what connects them together, the spaces in life. And when you start to notice the spaces in life, it's much easier to notice the silence in the mind. When you notice the silence in the mind, it's easier to venerate that silence. And then you can go there so often that thoughts become less meaningful. They're just extra objects. Like people always say, you need to declutter our houses. They've got too many things in them. And it's not the things in the house which are the problem, but the thoughts in the mind. So many thoughts we don't need to think about. Why do you do it? Because we don't know what else to look at. When you start to learn how to look at the silence, then peace becomes much, much easier.
Thank you, Ajahn. It looks like people are trying to make you work overtime now. I have a few more questions.
I thought so. No, come on.
So the first question is, Dear Ajahn Brahm, what do you advise we do when we are at a loss as to what to do or face, as to what to do or how to face a dilemma? Sadhu.
If you have a dilemma, you don't know what to do, what to face, leave it alone. Do you really need to make a choice? A lot of times, I've said this, and it's a kind of a nice simile which works for me a lot. You have a choice. It's like, so you sit down, it's like sitting at a crossroads waiting for the bus to come. The nice thing with buses these days, public transport, is they have a sign on their front where they're going. So you can look at that bus, and if it's where you want to go, then you get on that bus. If you don't want to go that destination, then sit down. There's always another bus coming behind sooner or later. So which means you don't rush to make a decision when you don't feel you're ready. Number two, when you have a dilemma, when you think you really have to make that choice in life, if you look at it carefully, you find if the dilemma is like, should I go out my door and turn left, or should I go and turn right? It doesn't really matter, turning left or turn right. One may be the longer way round, the other one a shorter way round, but it always ends up going to a good destination if you are a good person. That's where you belong. And so I often say that if you have a decision to make and you're not really sure which decision it should be, then just literally toss a coin. Whichever decision you make, it's not really important. What's important is you make a decision quickly and you save all of your effort for after you made the decision to make it work. That's the most important use of your energy. Most people, they worry so much about making the decision. Once a decision is made, they've got nothing left to make the decision work. So once you've made a decision, then commit to it, make it work, and then you find the decision works.
Thank you, Ajahn. That's very useful for perfectionists like myself. Every decision must be right, but that's a good way to be here.
That doesn't need to be right. I've made many wrong decisions in my life, as you know.
And they always end up right. That's what we're saying here.
Yeah. You can make it right by putting extra energy and effort into it.
Okay, and then the next question, dear Ajahn, when we talk of letting go, does it mean if we have to bring up the unpleasant past, this means we have not let go? Thank you, Ajahn.
No, you don't need to bring up the unpleasant past. This was one of the other little stories I'm sure you've heard before, which I mentioned last Friday as soon as I came back to Perth. And that is a little seminar which I attended, which I gave a presentation to psychologists and psychiatrists in Sydney. And they were always saying that you have to bring up the past. I said, well, kind of, but if you bring it up in a good way and make sure you know how to let it go. So that's when I told them, look, many of your clients and even you've done lots of difficult things in the past. So you need so many things to bring up. So the best way of bringing them up is writing them down on a piece of paper. But I said, there's so many things you have to bring up. Is why not do you get cheap paper, which is very not costly at all. It's called toilet paper. So you get out a roll of toilet paper. It's got so many sheets on it. And then get a dark brown felt pen. And then write on all the terrible things which have happened to you in brown ink on toilet paper, because it's the association you're making which is the most important. This is not the sort of stuff you should keep in a drawer. Toilet paper with brown smudges on it. It's once you've written it down, you've made the connection that this is not the sort of stuff you should keep. So then you go to the special cubicle where you do the letting go. It's called the toilet. And you read all that stuff you've written down again, carefully, and then you do the letting go ceremony. You put all that toilet paper with the brown ink on it, of all the terrible things which have happened to you, some deserved, some which, totally undeserved. You put it in the toilet paper and you flush the toilet. But please don't do that in the Buddhist fellowship. Find another facilities to go to the toilet and get rid of all of your bad karma from the past. What I'm saying there, it's making that association. This is not the sort of stuff you're going to learn from. It's the sort of stuff you let go. You acknowledge, you forgive, you learn. That's how to let go.
Thank you, Ajahn. I hope we don't have a lot of choked toilets after this. The next question, this person has a question. I lost someone whom I loved a lot. It's already coming to 4 years and I still cannot let go. He was my pillar of strength, and his rejection in the last few months is making my pain double whammy. I also have no family support, so it's triple whammy. Please help me, Ajahn.
With family support, you have the Buddhist fellowship support. You have very wise, kind people here who will support you. And what happens is when you do lose somebody, even the language we use, you lose somebody. I never ever say I lost my father. I say I gained him for 16 years. I would have loved to have him around me longer, but those 16 years was a fantastic time. I appreciate that so much. So you had someone in your life you loved so much, you've learned so much from, you gained so much from. You didn't lose that person. You had that person for such a long time. So please celebrate the wonderful times you had together and all the things which you learned together. And those memories, which I have of my father, they never leave you. The person is gone, but those memories and those acts of kindness, acts of generosity, and acts of, teaching me. As I often mention to you, my father taught me about opening the door of your heart. It wasn't from the Buddhist text, it was my dad, it wasn't Buddhist at all. But the way he said that meant so much. And I realized that that was the best expression I've ever had of unconditional acceptance and love. Son, the door of my house will always be open to you, no matter what you ever do. It meant a lot. And I would never, ever sort of wanted to live a life and I didn't learn something like that from a person who loved and nurtured me. Whoever that person was, enjoy the time you had there. And when it's time for them to go, the greatest act of love is always to let people go. With joy and happiness, with a great sense of thank you. You've made me a much better person. My gratitude is unbounded for you. And get that support from other members of the Buddhist fellowship. Go out there a lot, volunteer, talk, chat, have cups of coffee or whatever else they have there, and just have a wonderful time.
Thank you, Ajahn. And do join us, PROs here. By Danai, that will keep you happy as well. Next question, Ajahn. What kind of meditation is suitable for a family? It's family of parents with 2 children aged 11 and 12. So we would like to practice daily at home.
Great, we'll just practice. And just for the kids, sometimes it's best to somehow use the visualization, the guided meditations. I don't know if you have still got a copy of this. I'm sure you must have it somewhere. But once when I went over to Singapore and they said they wanted me to do a morning class for these kids, I never asked what age those kids were. They were kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. They were about 4, 5, 6. I think the eldest was about 7. And I never actually taught kids that young. And so it was Wesak. So I got the kids to imagine that they were the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree. Cross your legs and imagine that you're fully enlightened, so peaceful. There's no problems left in the whole world. You're totally free. You have no worries. All the past is gone. No sort of feelings of guilt. You've got this great feelings of joy and peace. You don't have to do anything else in the whole world. You don't have to work. You don't have to worry about money and all those beautiful things. And the kids really got into it. I wasn't teaching the kids to watch their breath because at that age, they're not intellectually mature enough to do such things, but to imagine things, to use their powers of visualization. They are some of the strongest and meaningful things which kids could do. Some of the kids who I taught here in the Dhamma school in Perth when I was a young monk, I knew how much they enjoyed going to the beach. It's almost like a cultural obsession for Australians. They've got lots of nice beaches here in Western Australia. So I said, imagine that I got them seated down, close your eyes, imagine you're floating out of your body Imagine over the rooftops of North Perth, where our first centre was, over to the beach. Past the beach, there's a little island in the Indian Ocean, not far from the beach, which is your own private island. No one else can go there, it's just yours. And you feel yourself landing in the warm sand, and you can feel a cool breeze coming over you. And it's so quiet there, you can't even see any ships in the horizon. All you can hear is the lapping of the water on the beach on which you're sitting. And you have a nice drink there, a nice coconut to open up and drink, to enjoy. And you've got nothing to do in the whole world there. It's your silent place. No one knows where it is. It's just yours. And at the end, then you float off the island and come back home. And the kids really loved that. So did I. Because that visualization is taking you to where meditation is supposed to take you to. And imagining and visualizing. And kids can do that brilliantly. So for the 11 and 12-year-olds, you might try that. And it works for you too. Get a few guided meditations which teach like that, and you have a wonderful time. And the kids get to like the meditation.
Okay, and then next question. This is a bit long, Ajahn. When doing mindfulness of the breath and the mind's attention strays elsewhere, do we, 1, bring awareness back to the breath, or 2, let go and go with the flow? What should you do, as it may be daydreaming and not a meditation object? Thanks, Ajahn.
So what I would suggest is, if the mind goes wandering off, you go with it. It's not like going with the flow. It's just knowing clearly where you're going and what you're doing. And then after a while, the mind feels, I don't want to be messing around like this. You don't bring the mind back onto the meditation object. The mind doesn't want to leave the meditation object. So your mindfulness knows exactly where you are and what you're doing. And after a while, the mind, because it's trained in kindness, the mind, out of kindness for its own happiness and other people's happiness, will just gently bring your mind back to the breath. But you don't do it. When you see what the problem is, the problem vanishes. In Buddhism, we have the old simile of Mara. And when a monk or a nun, a lay meditator, sees Mara, you don't have to kick butts, as the Americans would say. If you see Mara, all you say is, I know you, Mara. And as soon as Mara understands that monk, that nun, that lay person knows me, then Mara droops his shoulders, puts his head down and trudges off. Oh, the meditator knows me, the meditator knows me. You don't have to use force, use wisdom. And then the mind doesn't wander off anymore.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think that's the last question. One last question. Last one, I promise.
Now you know, there's always 3 last ones.
Yeah, there's always a last one.
Yeah.
How do we cope with recurring thought patterns or habitual tendencies of the mind that stresses us there and then?
What you do is you can actually change your habitual tendencies. One of the things which you've heard me advise before, which is quite helpful, you make resolutions. So a good example of that, you always, these are people you love, your husband, your wife, but you always get into this bad habit of saying negative things to them. And so you make the resolution, next time I see my wife, I will say something kind to her. Next time I see my wife, I'll say something kind to her. Next time I see my wife, I'll say something kind to her. You just keep repeating that, in the quiet times, just 3 times at most. You forget about it then. You're actually reconditioning your mind. And then what happens, you see your wife, and then you're about to say something mean and nasty, just it's your bad habit of speech. And then you say, oh, I'll say something nice. That's how you change your habits. It's not that hard to do. It's just brainwashing yourself, reconditioning yourself to do something which is wonderful and helpful. And you can't make decisions on the spot. You have to do this, what they say, like loving the tiger at a distance. When that person who triggers these bad speech or bad emotions is right in front of you, it's hard. So you imagine them just when they're not there. You make those resolutions when they're not there. So you're retraining your mind, just like a hypnotist would, to speak better, to act in a much better way. Those bad habits tend to disappear. But don't watch too many, what they call like movies, or those soap operas where people are always saying bad things to one another. That's not that's going to condition you the other way around.
I'm told I cannot skip this question because it's too good.
Okay.
This question is from 6-year-old Michaela. Michaela would like to know, how do you become a monk?
How do you become a monk inside that you want to be peaceful and happy? That you want to do something good for the world. And that's the inner intention. Will find the path to becoming a monk or a nun, whatever you need to do in this world. To see the beauty of what a monk or a nun can do. And the simplicity of the lifestyle, which means once that is established inside, that will find the way to freedom.
Okay, thank you, Ajahn.
Okay.
And then
Thank
let's
you.
say 3 sadhus to Ajahn. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
That's not enough. Come on, do it again properly. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Remember the 3's afterwards. Excellent.
So Ajahn, we would like to request that you lead us in dedication of merits and blessings.
Certainly. Here we go, the dedication of merits. 𝐈𝐸𝐴𝑇 hotu sukhito hontu yatayo. 𝐈𝐸𝐴𝑇 hotu sukhito hontu yatayo. 𝐈𝐸𝐴𝑇 sukhito hontu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And we would like to request for blessings, Ajahn,
This is what.
for the new year.
Okay, here we go. This is the new year. Sabba Buddha Nubhavena Sabba Dhamma Nubhavena Sabba Sangha Nubhavena Buddha Ratanang Dhamma Ratanang Sangha Ratanang Tinang Ratananang Anubhavena Chaturasiti Sahasa Dhamma Kanda Nubhavena Pitakataya Nubhavena China Sawaka Nubhavena Sabete Roga Sabete Baya Sabete Antaraya Sabete Upadawa Sabete dunimita sabete awamangala vinasantu ayuwadako danawadako siriwadako yasawadako balawadako wanawadako sukhawadako hotu sabada dukkha baya vira Sukha satu chupadawa anekantaraya piwina santu chatejasa jaya siddhi danang labha soti bhagaya Sukhang Balang Siriyayu Chawano Chabogang Woody Chayasawa Satawa Sachayu Chajiva Siddhi Bhavantu Te.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, yes. Okay.
Happy New Year, Ajahn.
Okay. See
Thank you for taking the time for the teachings. And Brother
Okay.
Hong Kong would like to have a word.
Hello, Ajahn.
Hi.
Hello, hi there. See you. Ajahn. So I think on behalf of all of us here at BF, we would really like to thank Ajahn for spending time with us at the year end, and then starting us off the new year on a good
Very
way.
good.
Thank you,
Right.
Ajahn.
So it means you have no excuses anymore now. You have to have a very, very prosperous and very successful new year.
Yes, we hope so. We definitely will do that. Okay. Thank you, Ajahn.
Right. Okay. Is that it? Can I go now?
Okay, Ajahn. So I see you then.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ajahn.
Hope to see you again this
Bye.
year, later this year.
Yeah, oh, certainly,
Bye.
yes. Bye-bye. Okay.